Artists switching their images and music up is what keeps things fresh and interesting, but sometimes these switch ups come at a cost. Whether it be the general public's respect, commercial success, or even the artist's own vision, and bouncing back from this can be difficult. Today, I wanted to look at some examples of artists who switched things up massively for one era, then course corrected, and went back to a style or image that was more in line with what the general public expected from them. This isn't exactly about comeback records, it's more about artists whose music went in a wildly different direction from what they've been known for, and followed up with a record that was stylistically closer to their previous works. Let's get started with Rihanna, Loud. In the early years of Rihanna's career, she was largely seen as a fun pop artist who made unserious party bops. However, things changed in 2009 with the release of her fourth album, Rated R. This record marked a darker tonal change, with less synth and dance pop than her previous record, Good Girl Gone Bad, and more rock and R&B influence. The whole era gave off a more dangerous and edgier vibe than she had ever been known for, especially on songs like Madhouse, Hard, and the lead single, Russian Roulette, which many people speculated was about her relationship with Chris Brown, who infamously had assaulted her earlier that year. Rated R was far less upbeat than her previous three records, with more ballads and a generally heavier atmosphere. Rihanna's look from this time reflected the moodier tone of the album, with her rocking edgier outfits and a new hairstyle, which is honestly one of her most underrated looks in my opinion. The videos were similarly intense, with Hard literally featuring her commanding an army. While Rated R was still very successful, Rhi went back to shiny, upbeat dance pop with her next album, 2010's Loud. This era was essentially the exact opposite of Rated R. The songs were bombastic pop tracks with massive choruses, and the videos were bright and colorful. Even her now iconic red hair from the era signaled that she was ready to have fun again. Loud was a complete 180 from the intense emotional turmoil of her previous era, and since then, none of her albums have been quite as dark as Rated R. Not that she hasn't incorporated violent or controversial themes in her music at all. I mean, look no further than Bitch Better Have My Money. But Loud brought her back to making widely appealing, radio-friendly pop hits. It's crazy that in the span of a year, she went from her darkest era to her most let loose and fun. And the fact that she made it seem so effortless really goes to show what makes her such an enduring artist. No matter what the theme or tone was for any of her albums, she slayed them regardless. Not many artists could pull off a Rated R to Loud moment, and that's what makes Rihanna such an exceptional pop star. Now if only she'd remember that she's a pop star. Kylie Minogue, Light Years. Kylie Minogue's early career was defined by upbeat, bubbly pop hits that, while successful, did start to sound more and more samey with each record. By the time her fourth album, Let's Get To It, was released, Kylie herself was ready to move on from the bubblegum pop, and wanted to do something a bit more serious. This is what kicked off what fans and critics have dubbed the indie Kylie era of the mid to late 90s. Two albums, 1994's Kylie Minogue and 1997's Impossible Princess, came out during this time, and represented a very stark image change for the Queen of Pop. Gone was the glistening, smiley, girl next door aesthetic of her first four eras, and In was a darker, moodier, and more atmospheric tone. Her biggest hit from this time, 1994's Confide in Me, sums up the indie Kylie era perfectly. It's ominous, eerie, and completely different from what most people probably think of when they think Kylie Minogue. However, while this reinvention did have its fans, and achieved a decent success, the mixed response Impossible Princess received critically, and its lack of commercial success when compared to her previous works, led to Kylie considering leaving the music industry altogether. Obviously, that didn't happen, and for her next record, she decided to go back to what she was best known for, candy-coated dance pop hits. Released in 2000, Light Years saw Kylie ditching the more serious and personal tone of Impossible Princess for a more campy, sexy, and occasionally pretty silly era. Light Years brought Kylie back to the fun-loving disco diva she'd been before her indie reinvention. To this day, with the exception of 2018's Golden, Kylie hasn't done a record as personal as Impossible Princess, and her work has largely followed in the footsteps of Light Years, being fun, upbeat dance pop. While I love the indie Kylie era, and would actually love to see her do something like it again, I must confess, I'm pretty happy she course corrected with Light Years. Kylie simply does dance pop better than anyone else, it just comes so naturally to her. Without Light Years, she may have been a completely different artist than the one she is today. Hell, she may have bowed out the music industry altogether had it not been for its success. And for that, we have to be eternally grateful. The disco truly needed her. Jessica Simpson, In the Skin. Jessica Simpson's debut, 1999's Sweet Kisses, established her as a somewhat more conservative and less provocative Britney Spears. While she still made teen pop, her work was notably more mature, soulful, and ballad-heavy than her contemporaries. While the album was a hit, it didn't move as many units as her label, Columbia, expected. Under pressure from the label executives, Jessica changed her image to be more like Britney for her next album, 2001's Irresistible. This record was very clearly inspired by Britney's early music, being a dancey teen pop album with some R&B influence as well. The cover alone let audiences know Jessica was ready to sex up her image, with her staring seductively into the camera while lightly lifting her shirt up. However, this reinvention wasn't exactly what she wanted. This was the label forcing her to be more like Britney so they could sell more records, and in doing that, Jessica somewhat lost what made her unique to begin with. Her next album, 2003's In the Skin, saw her take more creative control, and for the first time, actually having writing credits on a majority of the songs, which are mainly love ballads about her then husband, Nick Lachey. While I personally don't like it as much as Irresistible, I can't deny In the Skin definitely feels more natural coming from Jessica. This wasn't her putting on a performance, this was her true, authentic self coming out through the music. The sexuality was toned down, the choreography was less intense, and the music itself was far more soulful than Irresistible. All of this, along with her appearance as the lovable, if a little bit ditzy newlywed on her hit MTV show with Nick, helped re-establish her public image. In the Skin got Jessica back to being Jessica, instead of trying to be someone else, and her following records continued to stay true to her roots as a church choir singing Texan girl. Taylor Swift, Lover. The mid to late 2010s was a crazy time in Taylor's already crazy career. Her 2014 album, 1989, was a monster success that saw her fully embracing synthpop as opposed to the country pop of her earlier records. However, drama involving Kim Kardashian and Kanye West in 2016 made the tides turn on the superstar. Suddenly, there was a massive hate train for Taylor, and it's way too much for me to explain why that was in this video, but let's just say for the first and probably only time in history, it seems like more people were siding with Kanye over Taylor. She also received criticism at the time for her political neutrality, which she had maintained since the beginning of her career, though with the heated political landscape of the mid to late 2010s, many people grew frustrated over Taylor's silence on certain issues. The scrutiny she faced in 2016 led to her going through a dark time in her life, and it was from this dark time that her next album, 2017's Reputation, was born. Rep was a very different album than her previous works. The beats were heavier, there was more hip-hop, trap, and EDM influence, and Taylor herself fully leaned into the villainous persona audiences have branded her with, even using snakes as a general motif after she had been called one on social media. Rep divided fans and critics, with some complimenting Taylor's risky and bold new direction, while others found it forced and didn't think the music was as good as her previous output. When the time came to kick off a new era, Taylor decided to go in a totally different direction. Gone was the harsher, colder, more industrial aesthetic of Rep, and in its place, we got that happy-go-lucky, insanely positive album Lover. The video for its lead single, Me, even began with the metaphorical ending of the Reputation era, with the snake literally bursting into a bunch of butterflies. It was clear that Taylor wanted Lover to be way less jaded and bitter than her previous era, though she did also explore some heavier topics, mainly social issues like misogyny and gay rights, on songs like The Man and You Need to Calm Down, in an attempt to address the critics who called her out for being apolitical. The Lover era was a recalibration for Taylor. she got back to making sparkly, upbeat pop music, though this course correction wasn't without its detractors. Some people thought she went too far in the opposite direction, trying to force an upbeat and positive era that came across as cringy. Others called her political songwriting too ham-fisted and saw her newfound activism as a hollow response to the criticism she'd been receiving. While Lover was a course correction, it may have been too much of one, as it's still generally looked at as one of her weaker albums. I personally love Lover to death, but I get where people are coming from when they don't. It definitely can seem a bit too try-hard at some points, and even though I think the song itself is fine, Me definitely was a horrible choice for the lead single, especially when Cruel Summer was right there. But I don't know, I just love the goofy, free-spirited nature of this album. It never fails to put me in a better mood, and some of the songs are among my all-time favorites from her. Regardless, Lover was the light Taylor needed after Reputation's darkness, and even though she drastically changed things up again for her next album, Folklore, I still think the jump from Rep to this was probably the most overt course correction in her career.